thing, and also I should get you introduced with the COPOs of the thing. Like like every course is now having a CO. So let me just get you introduced to that also. One sec, just let's recording starts. Yeah. So you can see the major course outcomes are there are four COs are there. One is discuss digital printing technologies, then analyze digital prepress, describe digital proofing, and evaluate varieties of applications. And if you want a kind of marks distribution, the major chunk of this will be distributed in this one, digital printing techniques. About 50 to 60% of your entire course will be concentrating over here. Then this will also have a good share, about 20%, and this too may have a 10-10 share. So this is a kind of weightage given to the different COs. So with these small formalities, we are coming back to our actual thing. Now, before we start, can you tell me why this digital printing is becoming so important? Like how it is fundamentally different, and what is the need of this digital printing? Any idea or anything?
টাইম কম লাগছে কন্টিনিউ না বেশি জব জব পাচ্ছি ক্রিয়েট করতে।
Okay, and a small request to you all. I am not telling that we should not talk in Bengali and anything. Since this is a professional course, please try to speak in English so that it also will help you also to improve your communication. Okay, so yeah,
ওকে।
that's fine. Yeah, yeah, no problem. You can speak in any language of your choice, provided I understand that. But try to speak, because after all, you are going to have a professional degree and your target to work in a professional scenario, and mostly our recruitments happen out of the state. So uh, it is important if you can uh, communicate in the language which is used. Anyway, yeah, that is fine that we can print lot, time is less. But any other thing, like why this digital printing at all came into the picture? What was the major limitation of the conventional printing? I think you have been introduced to some of the conventional printing, like, Miss offset, screen printing. I'm not talking about the RIPT students, the uh, other students. Have you got introduced to any of the printing techniques yet? Hello? Hello, have you got introduced to any of the printing techniques yet? Anything else apart from screen printing? Okay, okay, no problem. But you might have heard few terms like offset printing, gravure printing, flexography. These things have you heard
Yes, sir. The stumps we have, means I have heard in the school
in school only?
while
Okay. Okay, anyway, so how this means what was the limitation of this technique so that digital printing came into market? One, as Pinky said, okay, partially correct, not always correct, because cost-wise, many of the times digital printing may not be a very, good proposition. And also speed-wise, like if you think some of the commercial, like presses, like think of web offset where you print newspaper and all. That much speed also is not possible using digital printing. Okay. But what was the major drawback of the conventional printing, which actually brought this digital printing thing in a very big way? Yeah, time consuming is fine, but any other thing? Okay. Okay, can you tell me an application of conventional printing? Any application of conventional printing?
Sir, we can print brochure or a book by using offset
Right,
printing, which is
right.
conventional, and
So,
by
so
using digital printing.
yeah, yeah, fine. So I'm taking that you are printing a book, right? So suppose I am printing 1,000 copies of book, and like I am selling it. Now suppose you get a task that these books you are getting a pre-order, and you want the name of the buyers printed on the first page of the book. The book will be same, but in the first page your name will come if you are buying it. In another, in my book my name will come. In short Shornomoy's book, Shornomoy's name will come. Okay. How can you achieve this using a conventional printing technique?
So in case of conventional printing, we need to change the image carrier for changing the name. But in case of digital printing, we can change that in for each job, which called personalization program.
Very, very well said. Very well said. This is the term. This is the term I was actually looking for, personalization. So this was one of the major need why this digital printing came into the market. Okay, suppose a brochure. I want only say 10 copies, and another job need only 20 copies. And those who have already ordered any conventional printing, suppose you have ordered some printing, you know that more you print, less is your per piece cost, right? Because there are few cost which is fixed. Suppose you want to print 10 copies or 20 copies or 100 copies or even 1,000 copies, the master or the plate or maybe the screen, in case of screen printing, the screen that you are making, that remains same, right? So suppose you are already been introduced to screen printing, so I am taking that thing. So can you just quickly tell me what are the steps of screen printing? What is the first step?
Preparing the screen first, then
One
coating the
second.
screen.
One sec. Preparing the screen. And I am taking everything over here, coating and all these things I am taking over here. Okay. Preparing the screen means you have the matter to be printed on the screen. Okay. Then what you are doing? You are using ink, squeezy, and all these things to print, right? And you are printing on the paper. Now you see, if you are, suppose this is costing 100 rupees, and ink is say, per kg cost is maybe 10 rupees. Just I am giving a very wrong data just to make you understand. and for one ream of page again I'm making 100 rupees. Okay, so suppose your total cost is becoming 100 plus 10 plus 100, so it is like 210 rupees. And suppose you are taking 10 copies of this. Out of all these things you are making 10 copies. Okay, so your cost is becoming 21 rupees. The moment you make 100 copies, your cost becomes 2 rupees, right? So if you are having a good amount to be printed or good number of copies to be printed, then your price is justified. But otherwise, it becomes quite costly. And I have taken the case of screen. Now, if you think the same process in case of offset, it becomes much more costly because your this preparation of the master itself is a huge it incurs a good amount of cost. Say for example gravure, you have to engrave or you have to prepare an entire gravure cylinder, or maybe you need to print only 10 copies. So you can understand that for a small run job and where you need personalization, many of the conventional printing techniques may not be a very viable approach. Is it clear, or are you agreed to this, or you have any other thoughts? Hello, is my disagreement to that?
Sir, it's clear.
Okay, so we can say that the small run job and personalization to approach these two limitations with the conventional printing, the digital printing came into the picture. Now, why digital printing offers such advantages, personalization? Because the digital printings are generally called masterless printing techniques. Although this term is arguable, means it means always you have a master, but generally we don't have a physical master in the case of digital printing. Say for example, you take any conventional printing like screen, you have a screen. In case of offset, you have a plate. In case of gravure, you have a cylinder. In case of flexo, again you have a rubber or silicon plate kind of stuff over there. In case of letterpress, you again have this molds, blocks, typefaces, all these things like which you can physically you can see or you can feel it. Hmm? But in case of digital printing, we don't have any such physical masters. You can view the master, you can create the master, but you cannot actually touch and feel kind of thing in case of digital printing. That's why often we call them masterless printing. Okay. But at the same point of time, you can have a contradiction over there that how can you print if you don't have any master? Without master, you cannot print, right? What is the fundamental purpose of printing? That you have a master and you are going to reproduce it to a huge number, okay? Because it is fundamentally a mass communication technique. So it's not that it is masterless, but you can say that it is actually it does not have any physical master like plate, like cylinders, all these things. So how the master is created over here? The master is created over here instead of the physical means. It is basically in terms of electronically, or maybe in terms of charges, in terms of electrical ways. So these are the ways by which the master is created. And since the master is not a physical measure, it is much easier to change. Okay. And because of this easy to change nature, you can actually include lot of personalization. Okay. Now coming to different techniques of digital printing, there are many, but category wise, like if you go by technique, that what is the basic technique of printing, you can have basically three or four groups. Okay. The first group, which we will start today, is called electrophotography. And it is also many of the times alternatively it is also called xerography. This is the Xerox principle, how it works. Okay. And there is another very important technique, like which is actually developed using the same concept, that we call laser printing. Okay. The next concept that is very predominant is called inkjet printing. And also we have another thing that is called thermal printing. And finally, we have another concept which is very in nowadays, which is called hybrid printing. You have any idea what is meant by hybrid printing? Any of you? Hello?
So
Any of you have any idea?
here we use offset and as well as flexography, some process used here, so that it's called hybrid printing.
Yes. Means as the name says that hybrid printing means it's not a sole technology. It will be a hybridization of different printing techniques. But hybrid printing is specifically, termed where you have a hybridization of one of the master with master technique and one from the masterless techniques. That means what you said, in that case both are, like conventional, what we call contact printing techniques. Okay. But if you have something like, say, you have offset and inkjet, that means one is a with contact printing or what we call impact printing, and another one is called a non-impact printing. Okay, this in this connection, let me also write that this is also sometimes called non-impact printing. Non-impact printing. Why it is called non-impact printing? Because mostly if you take any of your conventional printing techniques, generally the master, or I will say the image carrier, and the substrate, like what you print, they come into contact to each other. That is why those are called impact printing. You take any conventional printing, it is generally your image carrier and your substrate that come into contact. If you think of your screen printing, your screen and the paper, they come into contact, right? You put pressure and the ink and you get the print. So since you apply some amount of pressure to get print, that is why we many of the times we call it impact printing. But in this case, in digital printing, we are generally not very much towards that impact stuff. Many of the times, since we don't have a physical master only, the contact between master and substrate is no more viable, no more possible rather. So that is why we also call it non-impact printing. So digital printing, masterless printing, non-impact printing, contactless printing, all these are used alternatively. They all basically means the printing where your master, the image carrier and the paper or substrate that do not come into contact to each other. Okay. So these four topics we will first start. Now you have to remember one thing, although we have many developed things, we have many digital techniques, the fundamental concept is based on the conventional techniques. What is being done, the conventional techniques principles, the different steps that is being replaced by its digital representative. Okay, so to understand the technique, it is always good that we start with one of the conventional techniques, and we'll see that how these techniques replace each of those steps electronically or maybe some other way where we don't have any kind of contact between the master and the substrate. Okay, so uh, if you take your any conventional technique, as you already know, screen, so I'm just using that a bit. So the my first step over here is we have to make a screen, right? That means you have to get that mesh grid and you have to get that wooden frame you have to put there, and then you have to put some emulsion onto it, which is a photoconductive emulsion, and we call it coating, right? If I'm wrong, please do correct me because I'm not that much good in these things, conventional printing. So if I go wrong by any way, please do correct me. So you have to do a coating onto that, and then you have to expose. That means you have to transfer the thing that you want to print on this coating, and then you have to develop it so that you have a screen. What is the purpose of development? So in the screen, suppose this is the screen, and suppose I want to print this. So on the screen, only these portions will be transparent in the sense that from these areas the ink will pass, but from these areas ink won't pass, right? So this what we call this image area, and this is something we call non-image area, right? So in any conventional technique or any printing technique, this development means basically that you are going to separate between the image and non-image area. And then after development, what you do, you put ink, then you put pressure, you put the paper or the substrate underneath, and you get the printed paper, right? Is my steps correct or anything I have missed? Hello, thing? Almost all are there, no? The fundamental step. Now, if you take any odd printing techniques, they are almost the same. You say, for example, if you take offset, instead of screen, you have a plate. If you take gravy or instead of plate, you have a cylinder. And coating, many of the times you here also in plate also you need a coating. And in this coating, many of the times you may get a PS plate, which is called a pre-sensitized plate. That means the plate do not need to be sensitized separately. It is already sensitized, but you have to also do an exposure. You have to transfer the matter to be printed on the plate. You have to do a development, and then you have to put ink, you have to put pressure, you need paper, and finally you get the printed paper. Similarly, here also you need a cylinder. Then cylinder is many of the times it's not exposed that way. It may be engraved. But anyway, you have to prepare the cylinder according to your master. And then again, you need a ink, you need pressure, you need paper, and you need the printed paper. So now let us see that what happens in case of electrophotography. In electrophotography also you have all the components. Only thing, you don't have this master. So in electrophotography, what you have, basically you have the plate over there. So first what you have, the first step, you have a plate. Now, yeah, Sharnomoy, tell me, Sharnomoy, you want to tell anything? Okay, that was a mistake. Fine. So here also you have a plate. Now what is the plate, screen, all these things? We will call them, instead of plate, cylinder, so many names, we will call them image carrier. The names will change according to the process. Here also in electrophotography also you may have plate, you may have cylinder, but functionally these all are the image carrier. That means they are going to carry the image what you want to print. But this is not sensitive, and in printing the image carrier must have a sensitivity, and in a very clear way you have to make it in your mind that what this is doing, the image area, non-image area, what it is basically doing, it is basically playing with this sensitivity thing. That any type of process, maybe you have to differentiate between the image and non-image area depending on the sensitivity. That means one region will be sensitive to ink, one region won't be sensitive to ink. That is what you basically do. Now the process may have different things. Say for example, in screen, in offset, you do it chemically. In case of letterpress, you do it physically. You keep your to be printed areas a bit raised. In case of gravure, you keep them a bit down. So relief process, recess process, all these things are there, but fundamentally you are making a difference in terms of sensitivity. Okay. So here also we need to differentiate in terms of sensitivity. But this plate by default is not sensitive. Okay. However, this plate is having a very important coating on it. Sorry, a very important coating on it, this green one, which is called a photosensitive coating. Do you know what is meant by photosensitivity? Any idea what is meant by photosensitivity?
Sir যে এখানে যে কোটিংটা ইউজ দেয়ার in the blue ink where you use the coating layer, this coating layer is sensitive to the particular wavelength of a light, which that's why it's called photosensitive coating.
Yeah, but in general, what is meant by photosensitivity? Any idea? Okay. Photosensitivity means in general that there are materials when light falls into it, it shows some electrical characteristics when the light falls onto it. That is why they are called photosensitive. That means they are not sensitive in dark. You cannot find any current or any voltage if it is in dark. But the moment the light falls into it, it start conducting the charges. Okay, so that is why you can get a voltage at the output, or if even you can get a current into it. So that is why these are called photosensitive coating, and sometimes they are also called photoelectric material. Okay, that means you are having a photon as energy source, and at the output you are getting some electrical energy. So there are materials which can do this conversion. Okay, and that is why those are called photosensitive coating. In case of screen also you have a photosensitive coating, but that does not show any electrical property. That basically shows a chemical property, that if light falls, in some areas it becomes hardened, right? And in some areas it does not get hardened. So if you just wash, what happens? The hardened layers don't go off. The layer which is not been exposed, that will get washed off. This kind of things you have done. But in this case, we don't have any chemical stuff. We cannot wash the plate or the drum of electrophotography or inkjet. We cannot wash. We cannot do like that. So we have to achieve it in terms of photoelectricity. So this photosensitive layer, what we do, the first thing we have to sensitize it. This coating, the meaning of coating is the sensitization. Sensitization means that you have to deposit charges on it. Like in case of screen, you have created a coating by hand, right? You took some emulsion and then you might have used squeezees or something to create the coating. But here you cannot do that. You cannot take out the plate or the cylinder of the Xerox machine out, and you cannot keep coating by the hand. Okay. So what you need to do here, the coating, the sensitization means that you have to deposit charges on this photosensitive plate. Now once these charges are on it, you can call that your photoconductive drum, we may call many of the times PC. PC means photoconductive layer or drum or anything, but PC basically says that this is a photoconducting layer or photoconductive layer. So this is the charge is done. So this is a sensitive layer now. Okay. Now what you are going to do, you are going to put light onto it. Okay. So if you want to, if means the moment you put light onto it, and the wavelength of light, type of lights, all these details will come afterward. Let us try to understand the fundamental principle of electrophotography. So whenever this light falls into it, due to this photoconductive nature, what happens? These charges get discharged from these places. So after this, so this process is same as called exposure in the conventional printing. This is also exposure, and this light, where from light will come, where from light will not come, that depends on what you are going to print. I will show you in a bit detail. Let me just first initially explain. So after exposure, what is going to happen? As I told, that these charges will get discharged from the plate. So you can see here now we have got a differentiation between in terms of charge pattern. In some portion charge is there, in some portions charge is not there. Okay. Now what I am going to do, now I am bringing the colorant, what we commonly call toner in case of electrophotography or laser printer. So these toners are nothing but charged particles. Suppose this is the toners. Now if these are the toners and if you just allow them in a vicinity above this plate, and suppose you put a plus charge on these toners, then what is going to happen? Suppose these toners are positively charged and they come in the vicinity of this plate. What is going to happen? Any idea what is going to happen? Okay. Suppose this is a positive charged and you bring something negatively charged over here. What is going to happen?
They will attract each other.
Yeah. This will go and this will get attached to this one. Okay. So similarly here what is going to happen, since these are positive charges and these are again positively charged toner particles, then they won't get attracted in these regions, they will get repelled from this region. But since this is positive, this you can see that this is comparatively neutral area, or in the other case you can say in comparison to these areas, this is having a bit negative charges. So these toners will come and get attached to these areas. So after this process, this is the process which is called development. Okay, development means now you have the printable image on your plate or on your cylinder or the the image carrier. So now after this step you can understand that you are having the plate, and on that plate you are having the thing to be printed in ink. So after this step you have you have the you know structure like this. These are the toners on the plate. So now if you take the paper on this and suppose you apply a charge which is opposite to the charge of these toners. So say for example these are now a bit negatively charged. Okay. So if you apply a positive charge again on this paper somewhere here, then what is going to happen? These toner particles, which are now attached to this plate, are going to get attracted and they are going to move on the paper, the same locations where they are on the plate. So basically, this is moving the toners on the substrate. Okay, and this movement is called transfer. So now you have the toners on the paper, and that is what is printing, that you have to transfer ink selectively in the to be printed or image areas from the master to paper. That is, we have already achieved, but these toners are not strongly attached to the paper. So we have a very important step here, which is called fixing. That means now you are going to fix these toner particles on the paper, and there are different ways. Mostly it is done by applying heat. So many of the times fixing is also called fusing alternatively. Okay, where you fuse these toner particles to get them attached to the paper. So once they are fixed to the paper, you get the printed paper at the output. So on a very overall way, this is how the electrophotography works. So let me just list the steps again so that you can remember. In terms of electrophotography, we will write here steps of electrophotography. The first step is called, you can call it charging. It is also called sensitizing, which means that you are depositing charges on the photoconductor drum. So this is called charging, sensitization or sensitizing. The next step is called exposure. That means you are exposing this using some lights. So here you are basically using the lights. Okay, these are the lights. And then the next step is called development or developing. And in this step, what you do, basically wherever it has been exposed, you don't have charges in those areas, and when you bring toners or the colorant over there, due to their charge property, their polarity, they get attached to the exposed areas. The next step is called transfer, where you bring the substrate to be printed in the vicinity of this developed plate or cylinder, and you also apply the potential onto it so that the toners get attracted due to its polarity. So the next step after, so this actually results the transfer of the toners from the plate to on the substrate or paper. So we will call it paper or substrate. And then after transfer, the next step is called fixing. So in fixing step, what happens? The transfer toners on the paper are fused, maybe by use of heat or different kind of light sources can also be used. So they are basically fused so that they get attached on the paper, and you get the printed paper at the output of your printer or printing system. Okay, so this is sometimes also called fusing. So these five main steps are there. In any electrophotography, you have these five major steps, and each of these steps have lot of nitty-gritties, lot of technical details, and material-wise also they have lot of details are there. So from the next step, we will start a bit detailing of the individual steps. So that's all for the day. If you have any doubts, please ask me. Okay, since you don't have any doubts yet, if you get any doubt, please do put in the group. Thanks for attending the class. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay.